with all of that said about the attempts by the right to appropriate Martin Luther King and make his legacy about not seeing race, not being so caught up and convinced that there's racism in America.
And not literally going to jail via civil disobedience in order to combat racism.
But they didn't.
This is actually a decent.
Worse.
This is a decent correction. Leave it to Steven Crowder to make it explicitly more clear. That,
I prefer this.
At least it's being.
You're honest.
He's so dumb he can't even have the act.
I want to say he's honest, but when you start to actually listen to the content of it, it's really stupid.
But the racism coming from an honest place, and at least you're like making it clear. No. Everybody on the right and then some during this time period. If MLK was alive today, they would have been in the 65+% that did not approve of him when he was polled right up into his death.
The intent is honest. What he delivers is actually not honesty per se, but the intent is honest.
No, the visceral racism that spews out of every part of him is honest.
Here is Cold Feet Crowder yesterday, devoting an entire segment of their MLK Day broadcast to uncover reports and historical record that, contrary to what he believes people think of Dr. King, that MLK encouraged violent protest and rioting. Here it is.
Well, here's the thing. Everything we're about to share with you comes directly from congressional records, archived newspapers, MLK's own speeches. And I know the FBI is not an organization that I trust. Okay, I want to be very clear. However, none of the evidence that we'll be providing for you here has actually been refuted by anyone in the MLK camps.
Yeah, they just don't like how they obtained it.
Right. It was surveillance transcripts that were reported by a guy named David Garrow. But he also, this is the biographer. He obtained these transcripts from the FBI. He was the official biographer on MLK. He won the 97 Pulitzer Prize. So this is a man who was very pro. Did I say?
You said 90, 87.
87.
Yeah.
And the FBI surveillance audio will be released in 2027. I don't know why they picked that year. I have no idea.
Specific year?
Later, Yeah. They're like, oh, crap, it's getting closer.
So here's something that you probably know that MLK, for example, let's start with this. Supported peaceful protest.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That is true. Sometimes. He also had some pretty, I guess you could say, unsavory opinions about riots that I do think need to be considered because a lot of people don't know this part.
Now, pause it. I'm like, and I saw this, I was like, oh, awesome. How hard is he going to go at this? Now, I do think that what Crowder, and I don't know that Crowder was going to actually, but as you say, like, by the time we get into the late 60s, he is arguing that we cannot have racial justice without economic justice, and that he is advocating for socialism.
And he's made peace with Malcolm X at this point. Is he about to say that a riot is the language of the unheard? That quote, is he about to basically say that doesn't count?
Which is like. I'm like, oh, darn it. I thought he was actually going to have uncovered something where MLK was like, let it burn.
Bomb away.
But no, that's not what it is. It's really just the most, but I mean, it's,
burn it to the
it's
ground.
Exactly what you would think MLK would have said.
Kick his fucking head in.
Yeah. Here's Crowder trying to make this seem super nefarious when anybody who has even a passing knowledge of MLK would be like, yeah, no kidding. Why are you making it sound like you've uncovered something?
I just want to quickly puncture. Crowder has this posture that he's anti-FBI now just because of Jan 6. But if the FBI has its sights on either Muslims or black people, he'll take their word.
On board. Totally on board. Here we go.
MLK, for example, let's start with this. Supported peaceful protest.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That is true. Sometimes. He also had some pretty, I guess you could say, unsavory opinions about riots that I do think need to be considered because a lot of people don't know this part.
And continue to say to my brothers and sisters that this is not the way. Continue to affirm that there is another way. But at the same time, it is as necessary for me to be as vigorous in condemning the conditions which cause persons to feel that they must engage in riotous activities as it is for me to condemn riots.
I agree with everything, so that's fine.
I think America
which is everything.
must see
Of course, you didn't realize it.
riots do not develop out of thin air. Certain conditions continue to exist in our society, which must be condemned as vigorously as we condemn riots. But in the final analysis, a riot is the language of the unheard. What is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years. It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo. And as long as America postpones justice, we stand in the position of having these recurrences of violence and riots over and over again.
See, and that's the problem, is the open-endedness to it, because, well, what is justice? Well, right now people are saying, oh, injustice is there are too many Asians at Stanford. So let's burn down a Walgreens.
You need to be more specific.
You need to be a little more specific. And let me be clear, too, at another 1967 speech, and we'll get to the crack whores, and we'll get to the orgies, we'll get to all of that, which a lot of you don't know about anymore.
For a second, pause it. First off, commendable for Crowder, because probably that's more of MLK's actual speaking that most of the Crowder's audience and probably crew, probably Crowder himself, have ever seen. A. B. Note that he's criticizing MLK for supposedly not being as nonviolent as we think he was, while he's got a gun on him. You should just say, because the gun is, it's not about violence. It's about stopping violence. And then also, he has a problem with the open-endedness of it.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I don't think that there's been riots about what he said that there was going to be riots about. I think there was riots about Black people being killed by police officers.
Well, why didn't he just take the route of like, oh, well, I don't agree with Martin Luther King on riots here, but I can understand what he's saying because of January 6th, right? They are the unheard. This is the silent majority. They are not able to participate in society in the way that I think. So, I mean, he could have gone that way, but instead he's just like,
and then he realizes he's in trouble because he hasn't really, you get the sense that he's like, I didn't sell that very well.
Yeah, I didn't watch it. It seems like
it seemed more scary to me when I was watching in the privacy of my own home than when I'm watching in front of all of you.
When I watch it in front of you guys, and I realized like everything he was saying was like incredibly just reasonable.
Yeah.
But it was too open-ended. Then what he does is he pivots to, and then we'll get to the stuff about the crack whores.
Yeah.
The leaked tapes. Yeah.
Right. Incidentally, like crack was invented 15 years after Martin Luther King.
Is there any evidence that Martin Luther King's but this is about his mistresses? Like, he's going to
maybe he had prostitutes, or I don't know what it was that
so he's going real old school here. He's just using the same tactics as the racists in the 1960s are.
Listen, I don't agree with the FBI.
I'm glad you're owning it.
I don't agree with the FBI, but I am going to use all the stuff that they covered to discredit him.
Thank you very much for that football, J. Edgar Hoover. I will pick that up and run with it.
Exactly.
Is that it?
That's it.
Also, what's the deal with the Walgreens? Like, because of standardized testing issues, like, people are rioting. That's his excuse.
That's why people are stealing detergent from Walgreens. It's because Asian SAT scores.
No. People are stealing detergent from Walgreens because MLK was so open-ended that they can justify doing it because of Asian people and SAT scores.
Retail theft is important.
But again, this is what
I give you a blanket go card to do it. If in the future somebody's getting SAT scores.
I just really appreciate how, though, he is more honest than other Republicans and conservatives and centrists are about
disowning him as opposed to trying to appropriate it.
But, right, because guy, he's either the patron saint of America, and like, the Tide detergent is going to tweet out why MLK is so important, and you listen to what he says about all of the other like harder aspects of racism and capitalism and imperialism that are more difficult for elites to stomach, or you be like Crowder and admit that you actually don't really agree with the one of the more important progressive activists in our country, and like, let's not just completely whitewash everything he stood for. And
but
so
I think it's because
that's more helpful, because it's more clear this is what Republicans and conservatives are when it relates to MLK and what he stood for.
that I think is because he's a meathead and he's dumb and it's too complicated to speak in code for him. Like, his brain does not operate that way. I don't think he watched the clip in advance. I think he was like processing real time, and he's just, I mean, but that is a faction of the right. Like, they're targeting, Fox News is too sophisticated. You can't get a contributorship there. You got to play lots of games there and maneuver different bases and different shows.
It's interesting because when I went to the Glenn Beck 9/12 rally or whatever it was 1440, I can't remember which rally it was. People can find it on our channel. This was 12 years ago. I met a guy there who had a sign that said something to the effect of like Martin Luther King was a communist. And I went up to him and we were talking, and he's like, I love Glenn Beck, but he is absolutely wrong about MLK. He should not be promoting MLK at all. He was a communist and this and that. And I thought like, oh, this is refreshing.
Yeah.
This is refreshing.
Can I have that sign? Thanks.
Oh yeah, I did an interview with him. I think it's on the thing.
Yeah.
I think it's on
the only way Crowder's position there is sort of consistent is if he's a complete pacifist, which is not compatible with, the sort of like
the holsters,
holster American Revolution Boston Tea Party guy.
Right.
Also, did you see, just a real side note, that his producer was wearing a shirt that said dad on it? You might want to like have a rule, a dress code. It said dad.
Oh yeah. Well, he had a shirt on too that said this dad fights unless it's involving like, tough shirt to wear when you're complaining that MLK wasn't as much of a pacifist as you suggest he should be. But also, I think we also know, like, when he says fights, he doesn't mean like I go and...
He means shits his pants. This dad shits his pants.
This dad pretends his wife is in the hospital with twins because there's a complication in the pregnancy to avoid debating somebody with a much smaller YouTube channel.
Yeah.
But that shirt, that wouldn't fit on the shirt in the front.